The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, hello, hello everyone, and welcome to our today's webinar, which is going to deal with dynamic scripting with project and context. Today with me is my nice colleague Justin from Canada, and he's going to answer all your questions that are going to arise during the webinar. I'm going to do first show you a couple of examples and principles, and then I'm going to go step by step to through a little example project. If there are any questions about the example project and the scripting that I'm using, then we are going to stay a bit longer, and if you would like to, then we can go through certain steps of the script as well if there are more questions. Okay. Let's get it started then. What are we going to do today? First, I'm going to explain to you what is the context, the big mysterious thing. Then I'm going to explain what is the project. And I don't mean the Widget Designer project file, I mean the project object that enables you to use very flexible and dynamic scripting. And lately, the application example. And in the dynamic image gallery. Those of you who have been attending Yvonne's webinar last Friday about watch folder use will know about this kind of application already, because I'm going to do something very similar. But Yvonne only showed you the principle of how you could do it, and I'm going to show you how exactly step by step you can achieve something like this and what you need to pay attention to. So first of all, let me introduce the example project so you know what exactly you're going to be dealing with. I have a Pandora's Box project. You can see that over here, where a nice golden tea kettle is drifting around in space. But the important part is the background. So this one is having a playlist. So the background images are changing color. And we are going to dynamically fill this playlist with content we select in our project. For this purpose, I have a watch folder in my file system to which I can upload any kind and amount of image data. And when I did that, I can generate my button grid, something like this. Then I can select pieces of content that I want to display and also deselect. And when I push the content, you can see in Pandora's Box, playlist changes to what I have selected. What I'm doing this with is I am having one template button over here that I'm going to dynamically copy and paste over here, fill with content, and then you have a nice little setup with which you can just do whatever you want. Okay, let's get started. So first of all, page number 1 and my second window over here. What is the context? That is a really good question, and it's not easy to answer. First of all, you need to know that when you have an object-based, excuse me, an object-based programming language or an object-based system like Widget Designer is, there are parent and child elements. So there is a hierarchy. Your top element of your whole hierarchy in Widget Designer is certainly the project. That is also going to be the project object that we are addressing later. The next instance, so the next lower child element of a project, are the windows. So I have window number 1, that is one child, and I have my window number 2, that's the second child. This window in itself can have other children, like the pages. I have 3 pages, well, 4 pages over here, and I have 2 pages in my second window. And again, even a page can have child elements, such as any kind of widget you are placing in it. So this analog clock is a child element of page number 1, which is child to window number 1. If I use a custom script button, I can go even one stage deeper, because the scripting windows are also a type of child element to this button. Okay, let me delete those and remove those buttons. Okay, so this is the basic thing that you need to know. I have my everything that we have is a child element of something, so it's all a big tree more or less, that you can also see really nicely in the Widget Explorer. So there you got your whole tree view, your window number 1, you have the child pages, the custom script is child to this page, and there you got your whole view. And this is also basically the context. The context is where exactly is the place from which I am executing a script. Is it from a custom script button that is seated on a page in a window? Or is it maybe from a label that is on another page in another window? Or is it maybe a macro that is called from a button on a page in a window? Before I start going into the context object, I would like to show you something that some of you might have already run into. So I'm going to just make a very simple toggle page button over here. So I can toggle between my page number 1 and page number 2. And I'm using the page go to command. So now I want to go to page number 1. Copy, paste, exchange that, and apply. And if I press the button now, I have checked the fix box so I can see the button on the other page as well. If I press that now, I can toggle between these 2 pages. Okay, that's good. Now I have my second window over here. And maybe I want to be able to change pages over here as well. But okay, let's imagine I'm using my Widget Designer as a tool for a presenter. And my presenter has a couple of notes on my page number 3 and maybe a couple of pictures on my page number 4, which is this one. And from his presentation source, he might want to toggle the pages without actually accessing the pages. So let's see what happens if I just copy this button and replace the page numbers over here. So what I hope is going to happen is when I press this button, it's going to toggle the pages on my second window. But it's not happening. You might have expected that from how I phrased things. Before we go to the solution, let me show you another place where that occurs. If we are, for example, using Pandora's box, and we're using a widget device to send commands to Widget Designer, if some of you might want to toggle pages as well, maybe also from a presenter point. Maybe you have information displayed on the pages and they're supposed to be on a display with a touch interface. There are many many cases where you would use something like this. So if I try to do this, just taking the page go to command that has clearly worked, we have tried that, and I paste it in my in my key, and in the second page. Okay, so what I hope happens is I'm running with my now pointer in my keys, and the page changes. The page does not change. We get an error message. So the error message that just came from Pandora's box says, the owner and window is not known. That is a very good hint, because when you are executing the script WD page go to, Widget Designer does not know in which window it's supposed to change the page. When I am accessing the script from my custom script button that is seated on my page in my window, the button or Widget Designer knows, okay, that is being called from window number 1. Perfect. Then that's the window where I'm supposed to execute this. Great. If this command comes from outside, and it doesn't matter if it's coming from Pandora's box or maybe from a remoting or maybe in a different way, then it will always think, okay, page go, I would like to go to page 2, but I don't know where. So that's the problem. The context is not clear in which the script is executed. What you need to do then is, let's do that first in this one. Specify the context. So for example, you can use the window object. And yes, not only faders and labels and custom script buttons can be addressed with the object and member notation, also windows and pages. So the window gives you the option to set the page name. This is a string property, so I'm using an equal sign and can just assign a page name, page 3. With this command, I tell my window number 2 that the displayed page name is now number 3. So the complete context is clear. Widget Designer knows what to do at what point. Let's apply this. Maybe change that. And if I now press the second button, remember the first one does that. Now the second button toggles the other window, although it's not in the same window. And this is where context becomes very important. Same thing in Pandora's box. Let's check how that works out. If we go into this keyframe, and of course it's going to be window number 1 and page number 2. So if we run into this key now, it is changing the page as it's supposed to be. Great. Okay, so now you got an idea of what the context is and where exactly we need it. The next thing that we're going to talk about, let's see what that little context object can do for us. I'm just going to repurpose this button here and reset it a bit. And I'm going to use the debug message to show you what exactly we want to see. So a debug message. And when I start typing context, you can see there is something. It is the context object. The context object has a couple of really useful members that can all give you various types of information of what it is actually doing. So we have, for example, widget name, ID, and type. Those are really important. You're going to use those a lot. If you have ever worked with the old version of Widget Designer, it had something similar. It was called myID. So whenever you used the variable called myID, it would return the widget ID. For example, if you use custom script number 5, it would return you a 5. Let's do that over here. So widget ID. Click button. And of course, the debug logo needs to be open. There we are. That's number 14. That's my widget ID. And of course, you can also use the widget name, which is custom script 14, and especially useful if you have renamed your control to something. Then you will also get the renamed name. So far, so good. Okay, let's take a look at a bit more intricate thing. The stack. This is the call stack. It will, for now, not return a lot. For example, if I say test, it gives me the place of the script, including all the parent elements, so window, page, button, and which script it is. And it also gives me the information that I used the test button. I did not click the button, I used the test function. Okay, that's good. And if I click the button, you got basically the same information, a call stack, and which script was used. If I paste that over here, we have the release script. Okay, so far so good. What happens if I put that script in a macro now? I have prepared one. It's called test macro. And I'm putting in there the exact same thing I had before. So I want the call stack. And from this button, I'm going to call this test macro. Maybe zoom in a little. So what's happening now is what we had before, the click script, and now it gives me the test macro over here. That's great. Let us go one step further and add another macro. which I called another macro. Paste that one over here, apply, and call that one over here. So what's happening now? I click the button, I'm calling the test macro, this one, and I'm calling another macro. Happening, there we are, that is the call stack. And that is something that you can use really nicely if you're, for example, logging information. If you have one macro that performs some kind of action, and you have different triggers that can trigger this macro. Maybe you have it in a button, maybe you are using an action script node or something like that. Maybe you're using a device or a TCP message or something. With this function, you can always perfectly trace from where exactly a command was issued or a script was executed, and also find out where potential issues are. So if you are executing in the same script from a custom script button and from, let's say, an action script node that listens to a certain trigger, but the action script node always fails, then you can get some information on why it fails. Okay, let's get even one step further. So if I take a second button, and I'm calling the script of the first button from the second button. So this is going to be CS1. Remember that I changed the name. And I'm using the execute script one, the press script. Apply. And let's see what happens. There you go. A whole wonderful call stack. Script 15 calls that one, calls test macro and another macro. There you go. And there's a couple of other context members. It's not only the stack member that is useful. If you are interested in some more information about all the different members of the context object, I can recommend using the help file, where you got a really intricate list of every single member, and what it does, and what you need to pay attention to when you're using it. Okay, that does look good. So now you know what the context is. We are going to use the widget ID as well that I have showed you. And now let's go to the project member. Okay, I have my script field over here. And let me quickly prepare a couple of faders. Okay, imagine you want to fade all of these 5 faders at the same time up. What you could do, of course, is something like this. So fader 1 dot fade up in 2 seconds. Copy paste that 5 times, and then it's all going to fade up. Great. Now imagine you have 50 faders, or maybe 200 labels that you want to label somehow or access. That's going to be a pretty long script and very unnecessarily long. So what you might have done already is using a for loop to address a number of widgets at the same time. So we start the ID with 1 and we end it with 5. And what we're doing is we are using the global command. You might have, what is it? Fade up, that one. So in contrary to the object and member notation, the fader 1 dot fade up, you got the global syntax over here, and there you can replace the ID with some kind of variable. And 2 seconds, if I test this now, you see all the faders are going up. Okay, that's not bad. If you want to use the object and member notation, you have to use the project object. So this is a replacement for the syntax. For now, it is a replacement. So I start with project. That is a member as well. And as this is the parent object to everything else, you can now see that you have access to every other type of thing you have in your project. So I have a list view on another page. I could access that one. I have faders. I can even access pages in Windows and variables, which comes also in very handy at some points. So I want to access my fader. And now there is a possibility to either enter a name, fader1, or the ID. So you can use both, whatever fits your needs better. Or use a variable to do that. So, and now comes the magic. If you place another dot behind this, you see that you have access to all the fader members that you would have if you wrote fader1 dot. So that gives you access to everything that you need, but you have the flexibility to use a variable for addressing the ID. Okay, and we want maybe fade down now in 2 seconds. Test that. Okay, great. Working as well. So that is the first thing that you need to know. You can replace many parts of the global syntax with this project one. This is kind of redundant, but there's one case where you really need the project object, where you cannot use anything else. And this is when you want to dynamically create widgets or objects or variables, and you want to access them. So you might have already seen about this command. There are a couple of WD control commands where I can copy, delete, hide, and also create a completely new widget. Okay, let's say I want to create a label over here. And the X position, it's, let's say, 300 pixels, Y 200 pixels, and of course the page name where it's supposed to appear. And if you wanted to, you could add a couple of optional parameters like the size, a name, or a specific ID, which I don't need now. Okay, let's test that one first, see what happens. Great, label 7. There we go. Delete that one. So now maybe I don't only want to create a new control, I also want to give it a label at the same time. So I start typing. I know it's going to be label number 7. That's what I just saw. And then you might stop for a moment, because you have heard a couple of times in other webinars or in trainings, if Script Assist does not suggest you something, it does not exist, and then you need to be careful. That is true. Label number 7 does not exist. We are going to create it. Well, let's say I have expected that and I know what I want to write. So, well, as soon as the label is created, everything's going to be fine. So let's say hello. Okay, what I expect to happen now is I create my control, then the label exists, and then it's going to display hello. Okay, test that. Ooh, there is an error message. Who would have thought? The reason for this error message lies within the principle of, well, scripting in itself. So it doesn't matter if it's widget scripting or if it's any other kind of scripting language, C#, C++, Python, anything like that. All of those are scriptable and human readable. So I have my command, control create. I can read it, I can write it with my keyboard. But the computer itself understands only zeros and ones. The computer does not understand something like control or create or whatever we are entering here. So what the program needs to do is take this human readable and writable format and translate it into a machine format, also called sometimes machine language. And this is what's called compiling. Compiling is the process of taking code I have written myself and transferring it in something that a machine can understand. The problem here is that at the moment where it compiles, it sees, oh, label 7, that does not exist. Remember, we are just compiling, we are translating, we have not executed this yet. So label 7 does not exist. There is an error. And there is no way for first compiling and then checking and maybe seeing, oh, I just created that, then it's there, perfect, fine. No, it is compiling and it must be correct at that point of time. The object label 7 does not exist, so it does not understand what's happening here. This is where we start using the project object, right? So let's do that again. Project label. Okay, of course, in that list, wait, that needs to be deleted. In that list, the label that I'm supposed to create does not exist yet. Of course it doesn't, because it does not exist, but I know it's going to be there. It's going to have ID number 7, or whichever ID I might have assigned as an optional parameter over here. And then I say text equals hello. Now let's see if that's going to work. Test. And yes, it does work. But why does it work? It's because the project object exists at the time of the compiling. And what you have over here, this is just, well, something like a function parameter for the project object. The project object exists, and this is like a placeholder for the time of compiling. If, when the script is executed, my label 7 really does not exist, then of course you do get another error message. But for a compiling process, all we need to know is, great, that one exists, everything is fine. And this is how we are going to use the project object as a really flexible way of addressing things, especially for something dynamic like this. Okay, before we are going to take a look at our example project, are there any questions I should answer?
No, I think so far we're going pretty good.
Okay, perfect. Great. So just a short reminder. This is our example project. We want to generate a grid containing the data from my watch folder. And then we want to select something and push the content to Pandora's box. I'm going to open a completely new project, so we're doing everything from scratch. There we go. Perfect. First things first, because I tend to forget it. Connection to Pandora's box. I'm using my local IP, domain, and connected. The error message just now was telling me that the Pandora's box communication port was already blocked, but that was just because I had it open before, and when I opened the new Widget Designer, it was kind of thinking that it was blocked, but it was itself that blocked the port, so there's no problem here. As long as I have in my bottom line my master with no line through it, I know I'm connected. Okay, so how are we going to start? First of all, let's set up the watch folder. I'm going to use the watch folder node over here. And of course, I need a variable to which I can output the file paths. That's going to be a list. And I'm going to call it file list. Okay, so that one's empty for now. And I'm going to assign that to the watch folder. Output generic variable. And here I can assign the file list and the file paths. Okay. Now we need to select the folder to be watched, which is going to be my C, temp, and watch folder. There it is. Okay. And you can already see my list is filled with file paths. Oh, that's exactly the files that I have in my watch folder. Good. That's what I need first. Okay, then, please excuse my scratchy voice today. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to think about how are we going to set this up? How am I going to do my my selection frame? How am I going to check which file I have selected and whatnot? So what I did was I used a custom script button and I made it a little bit smaller by 64. There's one. And what I did as well is I used a shape. The shapes were the things that turned pink, if you remember the interface I had before. And that one I had in 80 times 80. When you're doing something like this, I do very strongly recommend just placing a couple of your elements on your interface and see how are they supposed to be, how big are they supposed to be, what kind of distance are supposed to be between those buttons. So the grid that I had with all those colorful things, they all had a distance of 96 pixels. You should check that out before, so you know what your interface is going to look like. Okay, maybe the line size a bit more. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, whenever I press the button, my shape is going to turn pink. And when I release the button, my shape is going to turn gray. And if I have my 25 buttons over here, and I'm pressing one button, it's supposed to, well, color the respective shape. And when I'm pushing my content in Pandora's box, I'm just checking which shape is colored. Then I can retrieve the ID, and then I will know what piece of content I want to load into my playlist. So how are we going to make this button dynamic so that when I copy this button, I don't have to enter an ID? That is fairly easy. So what I want to do is I want to color my shape. And I want to do it dynamically. So I'm using the project. And now I need the shape ID of which I want to color. The ID is, well, 1 in that case. And now I need to think, how could I retrieve the ID of that shape? Maybe I am going to set it up so that when I'm copying my controls, the ID of the shape is always the same ID as the one of my custom script button. That would be pretty smart. How do I retrieve my custom script ID? Because I don't know if I'm pressing custom script 5 or 6 or 20. This is where we can use the context object and use the widget ID. Now a little dot, line color, and set RGB. Now I forgot to get those RGB values. That was regular pink. That one, and 0 and 128. Okay, let's see if that does work already. Yeah, it does. Great. Okay, so I just need to copy and paste it. Pink is my active color, and my inactive color is going to be a medium gray. So 60, 60, 60. Great. Maybe also make it a toggle button. What I also might want to do is assign a different image. So the highlight doesn't look very nice. Maybe I can just use something out of the stock assets, something that's transparent. There, colors and primary. Great. There we got a little alpha. And maybe also use just some kind of gray image. So we have a nice little color patch. And now I can press it and unpress it. Perfect. That's my template button now. and ready for being copied. Okay, let us start the big complicated script for creating the grid. Okay, I'm calling that one create grid. We don't need any input parameters, so that's it for now. First things first. Okay, now imagine, no, variables. Okay, imagine you have put a couple of files in your watch folder, and that is always updated in your file list. What's going to happen if you are using this file list in the script, and while the script is running, someone puts additional content in your folder? That could destroy everything. You need to pay attention to that. So what I recommend doing is having a second variable where you copy the current content into and then retrieve it later. And so and that is how you avoid that the list changes while the script is running. Okay, I'm going to use another global variable over here, another list, of course, and I'm calling that content list. Okay, and the first thing that I'm going to do is just using my content list and assigning it the value of my file list. If you have seen my last webinar about lists and JSON, you know that you need to use the copy member over here to avoid both lists referencing the same thing. This is also problematic. If you have not attended this webinar, please take a look at YouTube. This is really useful for you for understanding more about how lists are actually working and going a bit into the depth of scripting. Okay, so I have my content list and I have copied my file list into it. Perfect. Now I might want to limit the size of my list, because someone could put hundreds of files in my watch folder. Can't control that. Maybe I just want a maximum of 25 files in my list. So what I can do is, if my content list count is larger than 25, I'm just going to remove all the files that are, well, behind the 25. So for I equals, did I do something wrong? Well, we're going to see what the error message says. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm going backwards. So imagine my content list has 30 files. Then I want to iteratively remove the last element. So I have to start removing at 30, then 29, then 26, and so on. There are different ways of doing this. This is not the only way, but it's a great way to show the step size. So 25 and a step of -1, of course. So what we're doing now is I get the index of my last list element, and I'm going -1 for as many files as there are too many in there. And I'm going to remove the last of my content list. Okay, there we go. This one checks if my content list is larger than 25, and it removes all files or all elements that are more than 25. Great. So now we can start our creation process. First of all, I need to know where my positions are supposed to start because I need to assign a position to my new elements. I did that before, of course. So I have my position values. My X position is going to be 450, and my Y position is going to be 100. We are also going to increase those during the script, so they're not all going to be all buttons on the same place, but they are in a nice little grid. So, and now we need to create our new controls. For doing that, we are just going to run a for loop over my content list. And a bit larger so I can see what's happening. Okay, so a for loop over content list dot, oh, wait. Of course, we are starting with 0 to content list dot count -1. Keep in mind that the count of a list gives you the number of elements, but the index starts with 0. So if your list has 25 elements, the index of the last one is going to be 24. This is what we need the -1 for. Okay. And what we can do now is just using the same command that excuse me, the same command that we did in the example before on the blue page. We just use WD, Control Copy. And now I'm going to copy shape number 1 first and give it the starting position, X position and Y position. So we can just use the variables. My position. It's going to be page 1. And now I can select a new name, which I'm also going to do now. Before I just took the regular name, and now I'm going to select one. It is going to be my color shape. By the way, color written in the correct way. Plus my I. So what I'm doing now is, of course, I need to assign a unique name. So I'm just adding an ID. My first shape, so my first button over here is going to have the ID color shape 1. Same thing we're going to do with the color buttons. The name will be color shape 1. And now I need to assign an ID, which is so that it's a bit easier to control. I'm just taking 100 plus I, because maybe in the end I'm going to add a couple of more buttons. And when I add buttons, the ID is created automatically. Maybe I don't pay attention to the IDs in the end, and well, I need to at least make sure that all the buttons I'm creating are in the right order, so they need to be consecutive. It's not like button 1, 2, 3, 5 and then 7, 8, 9. I need them to be consecutive. That's why it's a good idea to select an ID that is definitely going to be free at that point. Okay, and yep, that was the last one. Can now just copy and paste it and say custom script 1. Of course, I need to adjust the position so that it doesn't look bad. I found out before that this is a +8 and this is also a +8. Page 1 is still fine, and we're going to call these buttons color button. So the ID, as you can see, is going to be the same as the shape, and Also keep in mind, this is what we need. We need the ID of the button and the ID of the shape to be the same so that the script is going to work. Okay, this is going to create the buttons, and it's going to create, well, the amount of buttons that's in my content list. While we are in this for loop, we can already assign a new image to the button. So I want to be the image of the button over here, not the gray default image, but the one that I actually have in my watch folder. So these nice little color patches. Good thing is I already have the file paths to do exactly that. And the command we're going to use is, and this is where the project member comes in, custom script 100 plus I. Remember, this is the ID of the button we have just created. And then I can say image. Okay, now we need the file path of the image that's supposed to be filled in there. And the cool thing is I have those file paths in my content list. Remember that these are the file paths of all the nice little color files. So all I need to do is use the content list and add this one. So now I'm checking my content list number I. So let's say index 0 for the first element. If my first element is a yellow patch, I'm taking the file path of the yellow patch and fill it in my custom script button number 1. Okay, and as we have 2 images, the click and the release image, I'm going to do the same thing over here with the different that it's called click image. So that's basically the same. Okay, there's just one more thing to do. If I would execute the script as it is right now, it would probably work. Now it would work. But all the buttons and shapes would be on the exact same spot because I'm not increasing my X and Y positions yet. So, of course, I need to increase those. I have already prepared that. So this is also something that you need to check out before. That's why I said create a grid. And when you do that, check out what the values are. Okay, so that one. Okay, so at the end of each script, I am increasing my X position with 96. So my button's going to be 96 pixels further to the right. But when I have reached position 930, that I calculated before, of course, that is 5 buttons, I am resetting my X position and I am increasing the Y position. Okay. Good, that doesn't look too bad. Maybe we're just testing that. Okay, that's where the issue comes from. Number 12.
On the bottom project custom scripts, you've got 2 brackets in the click image.
You are right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Always fun. There we go. Awesome. Okay, really cool. So that's working already. And as you can see, they are all selected because my my shape over here has been in the purple state. And it's been copied in this state. Let's remove that. And oh no. Okay, I can't remove these because I use the prevent selection checkbox over here. Now I have to click on every single one of these to delete them, like that. Maybe I can just write a little script to do that. For I equals 100 to 124. Control delete. Color shape plus, nope, plus I. So does that one work? Of course. Another bracket. There we go. That was faster. Okay, one more try. Make that in gray and remove that one. Test. Perfect. And now when I click one of those buttons, you can see it is working as I expected. I can mark my shape around that. That is awesome. Okay, what just happened with the shapes being removed is actually a really good thing, because this is something that's still missing in my script. Whenever I call a script, I'm creating new buttons, but these buttons already exist, all of them. So before I create those buttons over here, I need to delete the previous ones, right? But the problem is, imagine I have only 10 buttons in my watch folder, then I have created 10 buttons. But for being able to delete all those buttons without an error message, I need to know how many I have to delete. So I have to have some kind of variable where I can store the amount of buttons I have. I can just do that at the end of my script. Let's create a new global variable for that, because this, unfortunately, we really need to store outside of the script. Integer is sufficient, and I'm calling that max ID. Okay. My max ID is just that one. So what I just did when I removed all those shapes is from 0 to the max ID. In this case, it would be 24. So that is my max ID. And when I now jump to the beginning of my script, so before I create anything, I want to delete what I had before. I just need to run a for loop from 0 to max ID. To delete the control. Why? Did I do anything wrong, or why does the auto script assist not do anything? Yeah, something must be off. Justin, do you see some kind of error? Oh, there it is. Ah, got it. So yeah, that's good to see. Whenever your script assist doesn't work, there's probably some issue. So color button plus I, that one, and color shape plus I. Okay, now let's just quickly assign the max ID before. So that is 24. And let's test if it's going to work. Test. Yep. It is working. Perfect. As you could see, it deleted everything and then created them anew. Wonderful. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. Actually, I think we are done with this one. Our button creation, our very dynamic button creation, is working perfectly fine. I can select my buttons over here and everything is good. Let's see what happens if we change the content of our watch folder. So, okay, this is my watch folder. I am just deleting everything, or most of it, and I am copy pasting some other buttons from over here in my watch folder. There we are. And if I now execute my grid command, create grid command, it should, yes, and it does contain all the nice new files. So that is working perfectly fine as I wanted it. Great. Now for the Pandora's box script. Okay. That's going to be this one. And we are creating a new script, a new macro. And I'm going to call that one push content. Okay, that one also a bit larger. So what I need to do in Pandora's box before I start pushing the content, of course, I need to have my playlist ready. My playlist needs to have a file and folder ID. It is 1 and 1 in this case. And for my convenience, I have a folder over here. I called it BG patches, or background color patches. That is all I need. Okay, assuming that the project is already up and running, and this is not the first time that we are doing this, the first thing we need to do is to reset the playlist that we have over here. So I want to remove all my content from the playlist first, and also from the folder, because when I add more content to the folder, it's going to create duplicates potentially. And at one point, you're going to have a folder full of 200 inconsistent files because they were already deleted from the file system. We don't want that. So the first thing we are going to do is just reset everything. The one for resetting the playlist starts with resource, like everything, where you're going to address a resource in Pandora's box. PBE playlist. And there we are, all items by ID. So this one is going to just clear the complete playlist. And all I need is the playlist ID, 1 and 1. There you go. And I could either just leave the folder in Pandora's box as it is and remove every single file from it. But as I am a lazy person, I'm just going to remove the complete folder and then recreate it. That's a bit faster for me to script. So resource, remove folder. That one is called BG patches. Okay, that one removes the folder. Then I'm just adding a little wait time to make sure that everything is nice and removed and prepared, so that I do not create any issues between a folder that is being removed at the time and at the same time trying to recreate that folder. So just to make sure that nobody's happening. Okay, and then all I need to do is recreating that folder. So resource add folder. That one. Now I want folder to path, this one. So the folder is also going to be BG patches. One too much. And as it is right in my project, I don't need to add another file path except for just this one. Okay, so I'm clearing my playlist, I'm clearing my folder, I'm recreating my folder, and I'm ready to go. Okay, now how do I get the information of what exactly is selected? I don't want to put my whole selection in my playlist. I only want the selected files, those 4 in this case. So what I do now is I'm creating another local list variable. I'm calling that one add files, and it's going to be empty. So keep in mind, if you want to initialize a new list variable, you can just use those square brackets, and there you go. Now, what I want to do is I want to go over all of my buttons, and the only thing at which I can see if it is selected or not is the shape color. So what I'm going to do, I am running a for loop over all available elements. So from 0 to my max ID. That's the next thing where I need my max ID for. And I'm checking, is my shape purple or is it gray? And if my shape is purple, I'm going to add the file path to my list. Okay, let's do that. So starting the for loop for I equals 0, 0 to max ID. If my project, and there we are again, the project shape. And this is one more thing where you would not be able to use a global command, which is retrieving values from a shape in a flexible way. So you can set, of course, the shape color. You got the WD shape, I think set line color or something like that. But you cannot retrieve the value from the line color. For that, you need the project. So, and there I would use, oh yeah, I can use just the ID. It's just 100 plus I. So the same thing that we had before when we created those shapes. And now I place the dot and I can access my line color. Awesome. And now I'm checking if it is pink. So for that, it is very handy if I know the hexadecimal code of my pink. Luckily I do, because I have researched it before. It is FF0080. And to color. This is one way to define a color in Widget Designer, because as you know, the color is one of those types that cannot be automatically recognized. So when you are creating a fresh local variable, and I say I have here my curly brackets, then Widget Designer recognizes, oh, curly brackets, that is a list. Or if you have your quotation marks, then Widget Designer recognizes, great, that is a string. And that works for string and bool and integer double lists, but not for the rest. So not for JSON, not for color. This is what you need the workaround for. You can define a color value over hexadecimal code. Don't forget the little hashtag symbol, and then use the toColor method of the string to convert it into a color. And this one now is checking, is my shape pink or if is it not? If my shape is indeed pink, what do I want to do? I want to retrieve whatever file is in my selected thing. So I have my add files list where I'm going to add all the files that are supposed to be in my Pandora's Box project. And I can say the array append, add files. And the value that I'm going to append is luckily also part of my content list variable. So what I used to put the images in my buttons, I can also use to put the images, well, in Pandora's box. Easy doing. That is the exact same thing that I have used before in the script. And there we go. So I'm checking my color, I'm adding that to my list. Okay, so when I'm finished with my for loop, my add files list is going to contain all the elements that are supposed to go from here to Pandora's box. Perfect. And now I can use a second for loop that goes over my add files list. I'm going to give you another hint when I'm done with this one. So from 0 to add files dot count -1, of course. And now I can use the very, very handy and simple Pandora's box command. Add file to PB playlist by ID. So the file name is, of course, my add files and whatever is in there, right? The project folder is going to be BG patches, the one that I have defined before. And then all I need is a temporary folder ID. So that's something that has to be assigned in Pandora's box. When I'm adding my files to the project, it needs to have a file and folder ID so it can automatically be transferred to the playlist. Without a file and folder ID, it's a bit harder. So temporarily, something that is not reserved, 255. And folder playlist ID is 1 and 1. Okay. So that does look quite good. Let's apply that and see what happens if I'm actually using it. Push content. No. Ooh, perfect. That's exactly what I selected. Wonderful. So if I select a bit more and push that, that's working as well. Yay! That's great. Okay, one more thing that you should know. What I did over here with this additional add files list, you can leave that away in principle. And just take this one and put it in here, right? And remove all of that. Does it still work? Nope. Oh, of course, of course. How stupid of me. Content list.i. Okay, let's try that again. Yep, that one is working as well. That is one thing that that I saw right before I started this webinar. So I still left it in my notes, but I wanted to show you that as well. So, yep, actually you don't need the add files. That does happen sometimes. You have a way in your mind how you're going to program something, and at some point when you're already done or when you're changing something, you see that something is, well, superfluous. You don't need it. You can make it even shorter. Then just go ahead and do it. No program is perfect, and in Widget Designer you have so many different ways of achieving a certain goal. There is a lot you can do and a high amount of flexibility. Sometimes maybe after you checked out a project that you did 2 months ago and you see, oh my God, what did I do there? That's so much easier if I take this approach. That happens a lot. Okay, so this is the project that I wanted to show you. Of course, you can take any kind of image file. Again, what Yvonne did in her last training on Friday was using really big pictures and have those in a large playlist. That is cool. But you have to keep in mind, when you are loading UHD files in one of those buttons, it is a UHD file. It is just scaled, but Widget Designer still needs to load an insanely large texture. And if you have 25 UHD buttons in here and you're trying to change the pages, that could take a while. So whenever you are using pictures in widgets, also in a picture box, in a button, wherever you can assign a picture, keep in mind that large image files are still large. Okay, so the training or the webinar is done for today. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to stay online for a bit longer and try to answer a couple of questions. This webinar is also going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel in a few days. Whenever you don't know how to proceed at some point, if you're stuck with scripting, check out the manual. There's a lot of descriptions in there. And if you're really stuck after checking the manual, go and send us a mail. We always like to help you. Okay, then I would say if there's nothing else we should answer right now for everyone. Justin, is there anything else?
No other questions so far.
Great. Then I'm going to say goodbye to all of you, and I hope you did have a good time. Bye-bye.